There is an old Irish tradition that says every Easter Sunday, when the sun first comes up, it dances a jig of celebration in honor of the victory of Christ. They say that in order to see the sun dance its jig, you have to go to the highest hilltop in the county, and you have to go with the faith in your heart that the same God who causes the tiniest blade of grass to grow is also the God who causes the sun to move across the heavens. And when you're ready and it's sunrise, and just as the sun is coming up over the horizon, when you look at it, you will see it dance from up and down, from side to side, in celebration of the victory of Christ over death. We are here today to celebrate. We are here today to dance Christ's victory over death. But as Martin Luther would ask, what does this mean? What does it mean to say Christ wins a victory over death? And how does that benefit us? We use those words all the time, but what does that really mean for us? I think as a way of looking at that, we need to look at death in two categories, two ways of thinking about death. The one that I'm sure comes immediately to our minds when we hear the word death is death with a capital D. When this body of ours dies and we go on to be in heaven with God, that's certainly death. But I also think that on a more day-to-day schedule, we often experience many small deaths. And I don't use the word small to suggest that they're not important or not painful. But we experience many small deaths from day to day, particularly in the kinds of losses that we experience. When we lose something important and it takes a life away from us. It struck me how in the last couple of weeks I've had conversations with a number of you actually about losses, about times in the recent times when something important has been taken out of your life. And that's like a death to us. The things that we count on for our joy, it's a kind of death when we lose those things. I'm thinking, for example, about the loss of a job. When somebody loses a job, when one of you or one of your family members loses a job, that's like a death, because a job, we count on jobs for the income, for the security that it gives. We count on our jobs for really to give us meaning, to give us a sense of purpose. We count on our jobs often for our identity. We are more fully ourselves when we have a job, particularly if it's a good job. And when we lose it, it's like a death, and we're wandering out in the world and we're wondering how we're going to get along. Or another kind of small death, I think, is when we begin to lose our health. When something happens to us and we just can't live the way we used to. If we're used to being active and we're used to getting all kinds of things done, something happens when suddenly we're not able to do that. It's like a death. And it may either be through a health crisis when we become ill, or sometimes it's just as the years go along and we begin to lose our strength and our hands don't work the way they used to because of arthritis, or we just don't have the stamina. If we really enjoy a life of being active, it's like a small death when we begin to lose our strength. Or another kind of death in our lives is when we lose someone we care about. We lose a relationship. Certainly that includes when a loved one dies. Talking to a friend the other day whose wife died, and one of the things he said is, we were married 55 years. And I could hear in that the kind of joy and the kind of companionship. Now that's gone. Or it may not be from the death of a loved one, but when there's a divorce. There's a divorce. Even if we feel that the divorce is the best thing to do at the time, none of us goes into a marriage expecting it to be short-term. We want it to last forever. And so when a relationship ends, a divorce or a conflict, or even if it's a momentary splitting apart in a family, those are deaths to us. What are the losses that you come with today? I think probably all of us in our lives have experienced times when something has been taken away from us. What are the losses? What are the small deaths that you have experienced, or that maybe you even struggle with now? Part of the pain in losing something is that it starts to feel so permanent. Part of the pain in losing something that's precious to us is that it feels so final. When we're in the midst of not losing a relationship, or losing our health. It just seems like it will go on forever. It just feels like we're dead. What we celebrate today, what we dance about today, is that death is not final. What we celebrate today, that neither the big death that ends this life, or the many small deaths that we experience along the way, they do not have power over us. Death does not have power over us. It's God who has the power. And God uses power to bring us life. God uses power to bring us life. And that's what we celebrate today. When the women went to the tomb that morning, one of the sweet ironies of that story is they went expecting to meet death there. They went assuming Jesus was dead in the tomb, and so they were bringing the ointments, the spices along to finish the burial process and lock up the tomb forever. But the two figures that meet them there at the tomb say, why do you seek the living among the dead? In other words, why were you coming here just expecting death? It's life. It's life that's waiting for you. And so what we celebrate today is exactly that God comes to us. God comes to us in those places where we think it's so final, that life has been robbed from us. The small deaths and the big deaths, God comes to us and brings life back. A friend of mine was telling me the other day about two friends of his, two brothers who were both in their 40s, who when they were both in their 40s, got into a fight with each other. There was some sort of big argument, and it got quite bitter, actually. And they were so mad at each other, they just stopped talking. They just refused to talk to each other. They refused to go and see each other, period. And that went on for 10 years. For 10 years, they did not talk to each other. Both of them, in conversations with their friends, said that they really would like to start talking with their brother again, if they could. But both of them, in their conversations with their friends, said that the other brother was so mean and stubborn that it just wasn't even worth trying. And then just a few summers back, the two brothers, without realizing it, both booked themselves vacations in Finland. Their parents were from Finland, it was the home country, but neither of them had been there before themselves, so they both decided they wanted to go to Finland. So without realizing, they both flew at the very same time to Finland. And so it was that on a particular Wednesday morning, visiting a vegetable market in downtown Helsinki, they came around a corner by the cabbage produce and came face to face, and it took them at least a minute to realize they actually were standing looking at their brother. In the course of that minute of standing there, they somehow decided inside that if God could actually bring them together in a vegetable market in Helsinki, that maybe God could also help them start talking to each other again. So they started talking, and they're still talking. Death, separation, anguish, conflict, they seem so final, they seem so absolute, but they do not have power over us. It's God who has the power, and God works to bring life. It may not always take the course of going to Helsinki when God brings us life. It may not even be a direct solution to our problem, although we pray that it is, and God can work those miracles. When we're out of work, there can be new openings. Sometimes the solution God brings is still a solution, but different than we thought. Sometimes it takes the support of many people. Sometimes, even when we're not seeing a solution right away, we're discovering that the new life that God brings is the wisdom inside, and the hope inside, the confidence inside, that we are still loved and cherished by God, even though we're going through a mess. I remember talking with a Lutheran woman pastor from the African country of Zaire at a conference a few years back. She was a woman who grew up in one of the villages of Zaire. She was able to get an education actually at schools provided by the Lutheran church there. She graduated from school, from college, went to seminary, and became one of the first women pastors in Africa in the Lutheran church, which is a story of new life all by itself. But in the conference, she was talking about all the significant problems facing Africa with the economy and so forth. Someone asked her, "Are you optimistic about Africa these days?" And she thought for a moment and she said, "The problems indeed are overwhelming, so I'm not going to use the word optimistic. That seems almost